Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, We hope you enjoyed the last episode because, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. Of course, as you can see, everybody's with me today. I got the whole crew with me. And today we got a little bit to get into. We are 2 games into the 2023 NBA Finals. So, of course, we're going to be sitting here and doing a little bit of a recap of those 2 games. But, of course, before we jump into anything, temperature check, how's everybody doing today?
Man, 1-1. Stole one on the road. I'm feeling good. I did not expect us to take one from home court, but I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna run away with it.
Basketball on the sidelines, man, it's a little different, so, still getting adjusted to it, but it's been some good hoops. Game 2 came up much better than game 1, but it's been some better hoops, so we'll see what happens at the end of the series.
Yeah, man, I can't lie. Game 1 was a snooze fest, but I gotta say, this last game 2, was very, very entertaining. This is what playoff basketball is. This is what championship basketball is. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So pretty much, game 1, the Denver Nuggets were able to beat the Miami Heat 104-93, pretty much having control and command of that game from the start to finish. But the Miami Heat were able to bounce back and come back in this series and take a game on the road by winning tonight 111-108. So before we do our takeaways, before we talk about this game, pretty much what we're gonna do is just go a little bit game by game, give our little takeaways from each and every game. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Abdi.
So game 1, like before the series started, I pointed out the sheer size of the Denver Nuggets and in guys like MPJ and Jokic and Aaron Gordon, all 6'10" and above in their front court. And early on off the bat, you can already see the size difference. I mean, Aaron Gordon looked like Shaq in that first quarter. Like, we had no answers in stopping him, whether we would switch, we would try to switch. And of course, he's going to abuse the switch with having a guy like Jokic who can deliver passes, and then with just Jokic himself. So the size difference was pretty evident. I feel like in this game, it came down to our shooters just going completely cold. I mean, Max Strus, 0 for 10 in that game. Caleb Martin, he was cold in that game. Duncan Robinson was cold as well. A lot of our shooters just weren't hitting their shots in this game. And, Jimmy Butler didn't have a great performance. He's really, really cooled off. I believe that is probably because of the ankle injury that he sustained in that Knicks series, because it seems like the first 9 games of the playoffs, and after that, it seems he's cooled down like mightily. So after that point on, he had only had 13 that game. Gabe Vincent, he was solid again, as he's been all playoffs for us. And Bam, of course, he was the best player on the court for us. 26 and 13 with 5 assists. I think he's been phenomenal so far in this series for us. And then for the Nuggets, whenever Jokic has a triple-double, it feels like they're a guarantee to win. I mean, him and Jamal Murray had 26 and 27 apiece, with Jamal having 10 assists. So if him and Jokic have 24 assists, that's a problem. That just means the ball's moving around. And even with their shooters like MPJ going cold, and he's someone that we're going to get to in the next game, he's gone really, really cold for these guys. But outside of that, they got great production from Aaron Gordon and Jamal and Nikola Jokic, and our shooters and Jimmy went cold. So, that game 1 was really, really tough for us.
Yeah, for me, game 1, man. Hey, to me, the game was very close. I was watching this game at a graduation, but I feel like the only difference in that game 1 to me was Jimmy, Struss, Duncan Robinson, and Caleb Martin combining for 22 points and shooting, I don't know what, from 3. I think it was like 2 for 24 in total for them 4, and that is just horrendous. To keep the game that close to them shooting like that. They going into game 2, I had some good thoughts for Miami coming into this game, and it panned out for them, and they got the W game 2. But for game 1, guys like Jimmy, he had to step up, be that star in that moment that he wasn't, and he only had 13 points. And Caleb Martin, he didn't have a great day. Duncan Robinson didn't show up. Struss didn't show up, and Mike Malone came out. He said, we can be happy with Bam scoring off 28 shots and scoring 25 points. He came out, said that, and he was like, if they do that, and they do that every game, they can come out and win possibly. And game 2, we'll speak about game 2, but yeah, that was my game 1 thoughts. Just the supporting cast and Jimmy Butler not being able to show up, not being able to hit threes, and them losing by 11 points. 11 points. Going into that game and the game one, anything could change. So game one, that's what my thoughts were.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you and with you guys and everybody that's gonna be listening and watching our episode. For game one, I watched the first half. I try to stay awake as much as possible. But man, I just couldn't. At halftime, I took a 15-minute nap, and that 15 minutes turned to 45 minutes, and I ended up missing the second half. But I ended up watching the highlights of that second half, and pretty much my takeaways from this game were, the game ones in any series are always fill out games. The Nuggets pretty much came out and put on display that they were the home team in an NBA Finals. So pretty much, feeding off their home crowd, hitting every shot that they took, and pretty much every shot that they took, they liked it. It was all quality shots, and so pretty much like the Miami Heat were in big trouble from the start. And there was never really a point in that game where I was like, the Miami Heat they're going to be able to string along some stops, go on a little bit of a run and win this game. But all the credit in the world to the Denver Nuggets for coming out prepared in game one. The Miami Heat, they didn't do their homework, but game one is always a feel like game. You always want when you're going into a game two, you always have more film on the opposing team. You come out more prepared, as we saw in tonight's game that we'll get to in a little bit. But like you guys had mentioned, Miami Heat came out extremely flat. Guys like Caleb Martin, Mike Strus, Vincent, Butler, Lowry, those guys didn't necessarily have it in this game. And I woke up from my nap to Abdi tagging me on Twitter saying respect Haywood Highsmith. And, I was like, I was questioning myself, am I still in my dream? Am I still sleeping? And I looked at the box score, and this guy had 18 points in 23 minutes. And so when that guy has 18 points, that just tells you how the game is going. That just tells you what type of day that Miami Heat had. But Bam Adebayo, a guy that we'll talk highly about in today's episode, man, he's been amazing for the Miami Heat in these first two games. Pretty much been the best player out there on the floor for these guys. And so all the credit to him. He's been doing well. But I do want to get to these comments that he said about that Michael Malone said about him. I want to get Abdi's thoughts on this because I know Big H said a few words about it. But his quote coming out of game one was, we didn't go in saying we're going to make Bam Adebayo beat us. We have great respect for Bam Adebayo, but if you're going to score 26 points on 25 shots, that's something we can live with.
I talked about this a little bit on Twitter. These comments are kind of don't make sense to me. Especially it seems like people are of this opinion that Bam was shot chucking in this game when, in reality, 5 of those shots, maybe even 6, I think 4 of them were like a tip in, 5 of them were tipping, and another one was like a half court heave. So in reality, Bam was really 13 of 19 from the field. It doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like Bam's effect offensively would be really, really felt if his shooters had shown up. If Jimmy Butler and everybody else has shown up, then we'd be like, no way Bam beat us, because then you would really feel the impact, because Bam was the only one that was consistently scoring for us in that game until it was late where Haywood Highsmith got a couple threes and got really involved in the offense. But, to say if we let Bam beat us, scoring 25, like since when is 26 points on 52% a bad thing, especially considering the fact that we only took 2 free throws, which is like a record in a finals game. So I really think Bam was super, super effective in that game, and him beating you is problematic because, he's going to put a lot of pressure on Jokic. I understand that Jokic is a great basketball player, but defensively, he has problems, and we'll get to that in game 2. But, if Bam is going to get to his spots and consistently try to score, I think that really hurts the Denver Nuggets, because when you pair him up with Jimmy Butler, and if Jimmy Butler is able to show up, then you have a 1-2 combo between both of them. And so you're not going to feel Bam's effect offensively if everybody else isn't scoring, if he's the only one that's putting up points, because at one point we're nearly down 18, 19, 20. And then we kind of slowly trickled it back down to 11, but we never really got the game into reach, but you'd really feel Bam's effect if everybody else showing up. So.
Yeah, I mean, these for me, these comments, I took it with a grain of salt.
Plus, to add on to that, I think before that game we were 6-0 in the playoffs when Bam scores 20 plus. So
good things must come to an end, right? But for me, I took these comments with a grain of salt. Michael Malone, a guy who's a very, very good coach. I normally speak highly about him, but sometimes he gets a little bit too carried away. Bam's effect on the game, it was beyond more than just him taking 25 shots in game 1. He was the only guy that really had it going in this game. He was the only guy that came prepared and came ready on the offensive end, and then also on the defensive end, he had the toughest task. He has a guard Jokic, and I mean, as we spoke, Jokic finished with a triple double in this game: 27, 10, and 14 on 12 shots. That just goes to show you, Jokic had it going. Jamal Murray was great, 26 and 10, and then all these other key role players: Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, and then Bruce Brown, KCP. They all chipped in where they may. So, the Nuggets did what they were supposed to do in Game 1. But now let's go ahead and move on to Game 2. The Miami Heat, after taking a couple of days off with this final schedule, these guys were able to come into Denver and take a road game, winning tonight's game 111 to 108.
So this was a pretty interesting game. In this one, I mean, Michael Porter, I think we started off with Kevin Love just because of the sheer size difference. Kevin Love did a good job spacing the floor and rebounding. I think he had 9 rebounds in this game. So, putting him in the lineup definitely helped with the rebounding. And in this game, Jokic was more of a scorer than he was a passer, considering the fact that, MPJ was not hitting anything. Jamal Murray was struggling from the field. Nobody was really scoring that much for the Nuggets. At one point, I think Jokic had 31. The next player for them had 10 points. So that kind of shows you how the game was going. No one else was really putting pressure on us offensively outside of Jokic. And, I think we did a great job of trying to keep Jokic as a scorer. Now, do I think that's sustainable? We'll have to see, because I do think there's a little bit more nuance to that. Because if Jokic is scoring and Jamal Murray gets involved into the offense, then that's a problem, because now you have 2 guys that are just scoring at a high rate. But, if we're able to try to keep everybody off from scoring and just keep it to Jokic, then I think that's a big difference maker. And again, Bam Adebayo in that fourth quarter was absolutely ridiculous. I think that combination between him and Duncan Robinson, where he's always sending the pin down for Duncan Robinson, and either Duncan shoots it or he lays it off to Bam, or they run it again with Kyle Lowry as a ball handler and Bam setting the screen. I think in this game, Jokic really struggled defensively. We put him in a lot of actions. So whenever Bam's setting the screen, Jokic is either in drop coverage, so that's a 3-pointer right away. If he steps up for the hedge, then Bam just rolls to the rim, and Jokic is not as fast to get back. If he's on a switch, then we're able to win that matchup. So I think putting him in a lot of action, having Bam as the playmaker in the offense, I think that did well. I mean, we started off amazing that fourth quarter. Duncan just came in. I think he had like 8 or 9 points in that fourth quarter. I think he did a phenomenal job. And then Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin, they hit some big shots. And so I really, really liked the performance from our team. Like, our shooters, I think, were 48% from 3. And a lot of people are saying, there's no way they do this. But I think this is like the 6th or 7th time we've done this in this playoff. So, I after doing it only 3 times in this entire postseason. So there's some level of sustainability with our shooters. And now we're going back home 1-1. But I do want to point out Jimmy Butler. I think the first 3 quarters, again, I wasn't satisfied with his level of play. I think he was doing good job playmaking, but offensively, I needed more from him. But in that fourth quarter, Jimmy Bucket showed up a lot of clutch baskets, the 3-pointer, the and one. There's a lot of great plays for him. So, 1-1 and stealing one off the Denver Nuggets at their home. I'm really happy about that. So.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, the first 3 quarters, man, is a little suspect, but fourth quarter he came in. I feel like he had like 8 points in that fourth quarter. He hit some big shots. He had that big 3, the and one jump shot. I think he had another layup in there as well. And then, Bam, guy that, like Mike Malone said, hey, we need Bam, a person like Bam to beat us, or we'll be satisfied if he beats us. I feel like Bam was the key to this game. He was up there and scoring with 21 points, and defensively down the drain, the stretch, fourth quarter, he played phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball. He was making some big stops. He was making some key plays. He was linking up with Duncan Robinson on the offense as well. And he was just moving things with, he was just controlling the offense and the defense. So shout out to Bam. And, they got the role players back to start hitting their threes. You got Struss hitting his threes, Duncan Robinson hitting his threes, Caleb Martin hitting his threes, even Kyle Lowry coming off the bench, contributing a little bit. He had a big 3 down the stretch as well, with time coming down the clock in the fourth quarter, which they needed. So, tell 2 different games. First game, they didn't hit their threes. I felt like, the time off that they had from the Boston series to game 1 wasn't much. And they got, a couple of days rest between game 2. They got their legs underneath them. And Miami came out and they played how they were supposed to play. And then on the other side of the ball, the Nuggets, Abdi spoke about how at one point it was just Jokic, 31 points. And then their next highest score was Jamal Murray at 10. And that was entering the fourth quarter. So they, credit to Miami defense. They kept, Jamal Murray and clamps to that fourth quarter. He had a couple threes, couple shots in that fourth quarter to make a little comeback. But other than that, MPJ was, he was a non-factor. 1 for 6 from three. KCP, another guy that he shoots a lot. He was 1 for 6 from the field. The guys off
And
the
KCP, I think he made like 2 ridiculous fouls that basically helped us.
Oh
to-
yeah,
the two
Six
closeout
points.
fouls.
he had some bad foul plays. He had some bad fouls late down the stretch too as well. Hitting people in the hands, cutting people's legs off. It's just mistakes on their side of the ball that they got to fix as well. They got to adjust to. But their bench, it did all right. They came out with 26 points on their bench. But that starting lineup, man, Jokic, when if you take the ball out of his hands or you just make him score and don't let him facilitate, the offense kind of goes sideways, and we've seen that with them. MPJ not hitting a shot, so he wasn't getting any looks. Aaron Gordon, they kind of mobilized them, and then Jamal Murray not hitting anything till the fourth quarter as well. So kudos to the Heat. Still in Denver, 1-1 right now. Going back to Miami, it's looking good. It's looking good for you guys, Abdi. So we'll see what happens. And Tyler Hero, man, if he does make his comeback, I feel like he fits in right. I feel like they get an extra piece of offense from him. Give him some minutes off the bench to come in and to hoop, but we'll see. One more thing though, Cody Zeller though, last year on this team.
You're muted.
That's another problem we have to kind of figure out because the Cody Zeller,
Last year on this team, right?
the Cody Zeller minutes have just been like just downright tragic. He comes into the game, we're up 21-12. Suddenly the score is 26-23 us. The third quarter, we're down 3 points. He comes in, we're suddenly down 8. We're down 8 points. So this back up 5 minutes, Spoelstra has to find something that he has to do, whether that's extending Bam's minutes all the way to 40 something minutes, or that's playing Kevin Love at the 5, or doing something because
you just gotta play. You just gotta play Zeller when Jokic is off the court. That's it. Other than that, if Jokic is on the court and Zeller,
the thing is, I think Bam's minutes sometimes they're like the start of that fourth quarter. Bam, I think he was on the court when Jokic wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when Jokic wasn't, and we won those minutes. So it's like, what should we do in those minutes when Jokic is on the floor? When Bam has to sit, because Jokic tends to finish out quarters, and then Jamal Murray starts the next quarter afterwards. So it's just like, how should we play this? Should Kevin Love be at the 5? Should Haywood Highsmith play as the 4, and then somehow Kevin Love at it just doesn't seem like there's like a solution to that problem, because every single time Cody Zeller has checked in, we've lost those minutes any single time he's checked in. So we got to figure out a solution to that.
Hey man, this is the NBA playoffs. It's the NBA finals. Each and every game is going to be a chess match, and so in that department, in terms of the Miami Heat and the non-Bam minutes, the Denver Nuggets definitely have you guys beat. But before I jump into today and game 2 and everything that happened, today's loss was the first loss for the Denver Nuggets at home since March. We're in June now. But now let me go ahead and get back to this game. Man, the Miami Heat, they came out guns blazing. Max Strus, welcome to the NBA Finals, buddy. A couple of days ago, these last couple of days, people were saying a couple of weeks you'll be playing in China. But that you made it an effort to come out and shoot the ball at a high clip. You started off the game 4 for 7. Finished 4 for 10 from the 3-point line. All your shots were 3-pointers, finished with 14 points. You set the tone very early. And then everybody else pretty much came along today. Gabe Vincent leading the way in scoring, 23 points. Bam doing his thing, 21-9. Kevin Love, I love the move that Spo made by putting him into the starting lineup. I think him and Bam as the front court is amazing front court, because it kind of works well. Kevin Love can space the floor. He has a good enough jump shot where you have to respect it, and then Bam has pretty much the paint to work with, and just it allows him to go one-on-one with Jokic a lot more. And Bam's done a great job at doing that. Jokic, of course, we know how great of a player he is on the offensive end, but defensively, he's not really all there yet, and I don't think he'll ever be. But he sometimes just gives effort, and that's all that matters. But Bam knows that he can attack his matchup each and every possession down the floor if it's one-on-one, because Jokic is not gonna do much to kind of bother him and make him shoot a tough jumper or anything like that. And so Bam's done an amazing job at attacking Jokic, and also on the defensive end, he's really done a good job at making him work. Tonight, he really made him work. It felt like every time it was a match between Jokic and Bam, it took about 8 to 10 dribbles for Jokic to really get to where he wanted to go and put the ball in the basket. But that's pretty much all you could really ask for from Bam. As we mentioned from the start, going into this finals, we knew that Bam's job wasn't to stop Jokic, because Jokic is one of the few players in our league that's gonna do what he wants as he wants, because he's a superstar. And so it's just Bam's job to make his life tough. I think tonight he really made his life tough. In that third quarter, he had it going. But overall, these last two games, I would say Bam has done an amazing job at containing Jokic and really just forcing him and making him work a lot more harder than any other series that Jokic has played in. But that first quarter of Miami, they set the tone. They came out guns blazing. A lot of communication issues for the Denver Nuggets. I'm not too sure what the issue was there. A lot of guys were just doubling on pick and rolls, leaving guys like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus open and for three. And the Miami Heat were able to knock down their shots tonight. That was a key factor for these guys coming into tonight. The ability for them to hit their 3-pointers, and they did it at a very, very high clip. And then pretty much the Miami Heat had the control of the game, then they lost it. A lot of that has to do with Cody Zeller's minutes in that second quarter. It is what it is, or in that first quarter, it happens, right? But the one thing that Miami did well tonight was staying with what they did right well tonight was to stay in the course. They stayed the course tonight, even when the Nuggets had their best run and they gave them their best punch. Miami always made sure that they responded well on the offensive end. They responded well on the defensive end. That's where it all starts. But then, man, it got to a point in that third quarter. I think it might have been about 5 minutes of play between the 9-minute mark all the way down to the 4-minute mark, where it was just pretty much a defensive battle and nobody on the Miami Heat could hit a shot. And the Denver Nuggets were kind of hitting their shots a little bit, but not necessarily at a high rate, pretty much every other possession. And I try to give it some time, because I was one of the few that said, Tyler Hero should be playing in this series. But after watching the first quarter of tonight's game, I was like, okay, maybe the rotations are right, and maybe Tyler Hero can affect this if he comes in and Eric Spoelstra slots him in. But after watching that 5-6 minute stretch in that third quarter, I'm 100% for certain and for sure that this guy, Tyler Hero, needs to come back for this Miami Heat team, because in that situation, during that stretch of play, those 5-6 minutes, those Miami Heat really needed a guy that could put the ball on the floor and get a basket. Duncan Robinson was out there on the floor. Kyle Lowry, I think, was out there on the floor. I want to say Gabe Vincent was out there on the floor. I think this was during the non-Jimmy Butler minutes. And it was just really tough for the Miami Heat to kind of string along some offensive plays, because pretty much all those guys are just, spot up shooters. And then you have Kyle Lowry, who's the ball handler, and his high pick and roll action with Bam just wasn't necessarily going. And so it allowed the Denver Nuggets to kind of go on that big run that they did in that third quarter, where Jokic was pretty much dominating, and then everybody else was kind of just feeding off of his energy. But in that fourth quarter, these guys started off extremely well for the Miami Heat. Duncan Robinson setting the tone. You even got to a point where this guy drove in. I think he got an and one, or I think it was just a layup, and the Nuggets called timeout. And this guy's flexing in the cameras and stuff. So in my head, I'm just thinking, what happened to the game, the beautiful game that I love? We're in the NBA Finals, and Duncan Robinson is flexing after scoring a layup in the NBA Finals. And so, but he all the credit in the world to him. He stepped up, he balled out, he was hitting shot after shot. The one thing that that's always going to stick with him is his jumper and his ability to create a shot for himself and an off ball action. And he was hitting his shots, he was getting to the basket, and then Bam, being the difference maker that he is, he had his impact as well. But Jimmy Butler, I just don't know what it is. The first three quarters were terrible, and pretty much he wasn't contributing. I think he might have had 11 or 13 points going into that fourth quarter. But then when the Miami Heat start going on a run and it's the fourth quarter, you just kind of have that feeling in the back of your head. It's like, man, Jimmy Butler's gonna, hit a couple of these shots that he's taken, and he's gonna pretty much change the game. And then, Jimmy Butler comes in, he hits a three in the corner, and then the Miami Heat end up getting a stop. Next thing you know, Jimmy Butler gets a 3-point play on the following possession, which pretty much gave the Miami Heat some sort of separation that they needed. And Jimmy Butler hasn't played particularly well, and we'll get to him in a little bit. I got some questions about him, but overall, all the credit to the Miami Heat. For the Denver Nuggets, it's an amazing fun fact. Nikola Jokic, whenever he scores 40 points, I believe, in the playoffs,
0-3, right?
They're 0-3. 40, and he scored 40 points in 3 playoff games so far. Tonight was the third one, and they haven't won a single game. So I think, I'm not going to sit here and say the game plan should always be let Jokic go for 40 and then pretty much try to take away all of his options. But I think that's a very effective game plan, because I feel like, the Miami Heat did a great job at Taking away Jamal Murray up until that fourth quarter where he hit a couple of big baskets. Aaron Gordon, a guy who played bully ball in that game one to start off, pretty much was a no-show tonight. I think the only bucket that I can remember him hitting was that three-pointer he hit in the fourth quarter, late in the game. Michael Porter Jr., a guy who normally hits some shots, he doesn't necessarily pass the rock. And he does. There's not a shot that he doesn't like. He didn't have it going tonight. And KCP, one of their key guys that they got in the offseason, just didn't have it going. And so the Miami Heat did an excellent job at capitalizing on tonight's opportunity. This was a perfect game for them to steal on the road. And I want to point out a tweet that you said. I think this was probably around like the 9-minute mark in the fourth quarter where you said nobody outside of Jokic for the Nuggets has more than 10. We've hit 15 threes. If we don't win this series, if we don't win this game, we'll never win any game in this series. And I read that and I was like, yeah, 100% agree because
Everything's in our favor.
Everything was going in your guys' favor. And so, what could possibly go wrong? And the Denver Nuggets, they hung in there. They hit a couple of big shots down the stretch, but just wasn't enough. But Jimmy Butler on Jamal Murray on that last possession, that was great defense. Jamal Murray got a good look, but unfortunately, he just wasn't able to go down a 9. So,
you guys think that Malone should have called the timeout?
It's a good question. Big H, I'll let you go first on this one.
I think he should have called the timeout. I think he should have. He had 9 seconds left on the clock and get set.
The only reason why I don't say that, only reason why is because usually teams are their defenses aren't set in those situations. It's kind of just everybody's kind of scrambling at that point. And Jamal did get a good look. I think that's probably the best look that he was gonna get. But even then, you could still design some sort of play. But regardless, though, I think I'm more of the opinion that in that situation, you just kind of let your players play. But you could make the argument if there was more time, let's say there's 25, 24 seconds, then that's when you call a timeout. You're just okay, let's get set. But if there's 12, 13 seconds, I guess it's just more so just let your basketball players play.
Big H, what's your reasoning for him calling a timeout in that situation? I think you're in favor for that, right?
I feel like they just get set, like Jokic try to handle that offense, let Jokic facilitate for that shot, instead of just scrambling for a step back three like that. And that's it. I feel like they had 10 seconds on the clock. You have enough time, call timeout, get the ball up to half court, advance it. Then after that, just you run your play, and get your best look. And if you do get your best look, none could possibly go wrong. None possibly go wrong. So, but them, letting Murray do all the dribbling, let him kill clock, and then taking the step back fadeaway three. I mean, it's a good look, but at the same time, it's a tough look.
Yeah,
100%. For me, I just feel I definitely think that Mike Malone should have called a timeout in this situation because this is not a regular season game. This is not a round 1, round 2, round 3 game. This is the NBA Finals we're talking about, and so you want to make sure that your guys get the best quality shot in crunch time to send your team to overtime or even win the game. And I feel like although Jamal Murray, his look was a very great look and it was great defense by Jimmy Butler, I just feel like in this situation, the NBA Finals, you're supposed to call timeout. You're supposed to draw up a play that's gonna work. There should be multiple options down the stretch, multiple guys that are able to hit that shot and they're in the right positions. And I feel like Mike Malone could have done that if he just called a timeout. But nonetheless, even if you go down the court and don't call a timeout, I think Jokic and Jamal Murray tried running a little bit of a pick and roll in towards the end of the game, which made absolutely no sense to me. What is a Jamal Murray Jokic pick and roll going to look like when you're down 3 and there's only a few seconds left in the clock? Is Jokic going to pop out for a 3? Jokic pretty much just stood there. It didn't do much. Jamal Murray got the switch. It was Gabe Vincent that was guarding Jokic, and then it ended up being Jimmy Butler. The next thing you know, Jamal Murray decided he was just going to go one-on-one. And, it was a quality look, but just didn't go down tonight. But I think in that situation, I think you do got to call a timeout and kind of gather your guys, kind of call the right play, draw up a nice play, get everybody in their positions. And, whatever happens in that situation, it happens. You can live with that. But obviously, I think the Denver Nuggets are going to live with this result. Mike Malone pointed it out in the post-game presser that the effort wasn't there tonight. And I think that was shown from start to finish. The communication was off, like I've said, and defensively, these guys weren't necessarily there. A lot of guys had a lot of open looks, and these guys were able to get to the basket, hit some shots, and the Miami Heat are going to be able to live with it if Gabe Vincent's leading the team in scoring and Jimmy Butler doesn't necessarily have it going. And so I think the Miami Heat did an excellent job tonight. The game plan worked to to a T, and they're able to steal a game on the road. Now they go back to Miami for a game on Wednesday. I hate these 2-day breaks up until the next game, but it is what it is now. We're at this point in the NBA season where it's the NBA finals, so a lot of these guys are going to get days off. But what are some things that the Nuggets and the Miami Heat have to do for these guys to kind of create separation for themselves and going forward in this series?
I think for the Nuggets, you kind of need your shooters to show up. You need MPJ to have a good game. You need Jamal Murray to get going early. I feel like Jamal Murray getting involved late in the offense, that was kind of a difference maker for them because he kind of scares me because when he gets hot, he's one of those players like it reminds me of like a Kyrie Irving type of player where when they get hot, it's like they're really, really hot. They just start hitting like some ridiculous shots. So I feel like getting him involved early and him just putting pressure on the defense, I feel like that's a big difference in MPJ hitting his shots. I do think that they have to find some sort of a counter to when we start running that zone. I think that zone kind of bothered them a bit in that to start that fourth quarter until we started running man late in that fourth. They got to find a counter to that because I feel like Spoelstra pulling out that zone really caused them problems. And then and for the Miami Heat, it's really just the shooters still showing up. That's the number one thing. The shooters still having to show up, and for us, it's Bam constantly putting pressure on Jokic. Him being the playmaker in this offense really opens up things. Guys start getting going, and Jimmy Butler has to really, really put pressure. He has to start from quarter one. He really needs to get involved early and start scoring. These games where he's just starting slow and showing up in the fourth quarter. The Nuggets are too talented, too good offensively to let that slide because easily it could be a blowout if Jimmy Butler doesn't show up and our shooters go cold again. You can't really rely on Bam to constantly get you 25 points and bail you out. So for us, is our shooters still staying consistent, Bam being the playmaker, and Jimmy Butler showing up. So
Yeah, for me, Miami, they're gonna need their shooters to, stay consistent and, perform like they've been performing in this playoffs. I felt like last game was just a one-off. All this playoffs, every round, they've been shooting lights out. They've been showing up at the right moments in the right time, and they've been pretty consistent. So for them to, be consistent every game, for them to come in next game and, still shoot the lights out. And another one is just Jimmy Butler. I feel like the last couple of games we haven't really seen a great performance from him. Last series, pretty much the last like 5 or 6 games, he's been okay. It hasn't been really above the top, And I feel like this game he got saved by Bam, he got saved by the shooters. And fourth quarter he did have some big shots, but other than that, he gotta come out from the jump from the start, first quarter, and just let it rip. And just go at it, immediately. Set that tone and let be the leader he is, and let the teammates follow. And for Denver, it's the same thing. Jamal Murray got to come out from the jump. It's the same way for him as Jimmy Butler. They're playoff risers. He's got to come out, let it rip from the jump. Get going fast. And Jokic does what Jokic does. Always consistent. He's gonna get his baskets. And it's just the role players again: KCP, Bruce Brown, MPJ, Aaron Gordon. Can those guys be consistent? Can they come in the next game and be lights out from the three like they've been all playoffs? So we'll see what happens. But I feel like those are the key points. Jamal Murray, you got to be more effective, more consistent, and Jim Butler as well. He got to come in and be the dog that everybody thought he was in this playoff. So we'll see what happens.
We're definitely going to see what happens, man. These next couple of games are going to be very, very crucial games for both teams. Denver Nuggets, I think Jamal Murray, this was just a game where we just didn't necessarily have it going. It is what it is. I think throughout the course of these playoffs, game twos haven't been good to Jamal Murray at all. And so, game threes normally, every other game after that he's solid, but game twos is where his play kind of drops very, very low. So Jokic and Jamal Murray have to have it going. But I think I agree with you guys all when you guys talk about these other role players have to have it going. It's a team effort. This is a team game. Michael Porter, he's got to be able to shoot the ball better. They were able to win game one, but he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. I think he might have been 2 for 11 or 2 for 10 from the 3-point line, and that's not something you can live with. And so he's got to shoot the ball better. KCP, he's got to be more disciplined. You can't be fouling guys on 3-point attempts, giving up free throws easily like that. And Aaron Gordon's got to find himself find himself in better positions in these next couple of games, because obviously in the first game you had Caleb Martin on you, but now you don't. And so how is Aaron Gordon going to slot himself into this series when the matchup, for him is kind of fair, where it's big on big, and he doesn't necessarily have the size advantage. Is he a guy that's going to be able to use his quickness to get by and get to the rim? We're just going to have to wait and see on that. And then for the Miami Heat, for me, it's simple. It's Jimmy Butler. I think the role players, I don't have any questions about them. I mean, they stepped up tonight big on the road in a very, very tough environment, especially coming off a game where none of them had it going. And so, I think that's going to carry over for these next two games at home. These role players always play better at home. And the Miami Heat's role players have played good away and home throughout this course of these playoffs. And the role players are going to feed off the home crowd. And for me, my question mark for sure lands on Jimmy Butler, whether or not he's going to be able to show up and be the dominant player that we deemed him to be, the playoff performer that we deemed him to be. He hasn't had a great playoff performance in a lot of games now. It's been a handful of games now. We've given him a pass because of everything that he's been through so far throughout the course of these playoffs. But I think we've all reached a point right now in these playoffs where it's time for Jimmy Butler to kind of show up and have one of those games where he might score 35 or he might score 40 points and be the reason why the Miami Heat win a basketball game. And so I think, it all falls on Jimmy Butler in these next two games because the Denver Nuggets are a capable team of they're capable enough to go on the road and steal a game and secure home court going back to Denver for Game 5. And so it's going to be a tough couple of games for these two teams, but it's going to be an interesting couple of games because these guys pretty much know each other from the back of their hand, and there's not much film, not much adjustments you can make in the NBA Finals because of course you got to be able to beat a team 4 times, and you have all the film in the world on these guys now. But it's going to be interesting to see, like I said. But I do want to talk about Jimmy Butler, though, a little bit more. Jimmy Butler is a guy that we deemed, a true playoff performer, a true playoff riser. And now, we got to look at the numbers and call it for what it is. So Jimmy Butler's first 9 games of the 2023 playoffs, he's averaged 31 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 55% from the field, 39% from 3. In his last 9 games, excluding tonight's game, he scored 23 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, he shot 41% from the field, and he's shooting 32% from the 3-point line. So pretty much, I guess my question is have we overrated Jimmy Butler as a playoff performer?
Nah, I can't buy into that. I think the ankle injury has gone to Jimmy Butler, and I know he's come out and he said, it doesn't matter. You're in the playoffs. People are injured. You just play anyways. But it doesn't make any sense that Jimmy Butler, before the ankle injury he sustained against the Knicks, he was playing on a different level in terms of his jump shot, getting to the basket, his lift, and then ever since then, I know he's had a couple big games like against the Celtics, but ever since then, he's been averaging about 23 points per game on some low efficiency. And it feels like his lift and his overall ability to just get to the basket and rise over people. I mean, I can't count how many times in that Boston series he just got blocked straight up trying to go to the basket. And it just seems like his jump shot. There's even times in Game 1 where he had the open look, the same type of looks that he was getting in the Bucks series where Brook Lopez was in drop coverage and he would shoot that. And now he isn't even shooting that. He's not getting the same lift. I think Jimmy Butler is a playoff performer. I mean, evident by the first 9 games in the playoffs and what he's done with this team, and I feel like he doesn't get overrated as playoff performer. I think he rightfully praised as one, and so to me it's just been the ankle injury, but he does need to show up. I mean, you're on the court. I can't give you that many excuses, but I do think that ankle injury is playing a factor. So
for me, I wouldn't say we jumped the gun on him being the playoff performer that he's been. I feel like, with the ankle injury, I feel like it's been bothering him a little bit. But if you look at the stats, I mean, with the 56-point game against Giannis, I feel like with that, inflating his stats before that ankle injury, it helps a lot, And after coming back from the averaging 24, 7, and 6, I feel like, that's still phenomenal, playing great defense. And he's done showing up some big games, and he's done had some horrible games, but the big games are much better than the horrible games. And they got him W's in those games. And, with the ankle injury happened that last round, I feel like, now it's time so we can throw that excuse out the room. It's time for him to show up. It's time for him to be that star again. And all these shooting performances that he's having going into the fourth quarter, shooting 7 for 19, 8 for 24, this and that, getting garbage points. We don't need that no more in the end. We need to see a classic Jimmy Himothy Butler performance. So, I feel like he's been playing okay, but we could throw the ankle injury out now. It's been about 2 rounds.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree if anybody said we've overrated him. I think, Jimmy Butler, He was amazing in those first 9 games, and as of late, it's just been pretty mid. I would say, and ankle injuries does play a factor in that. But at some point, if you're out there on the floor, you kind of have to you still have to live up to your expectations and your standards. And I feel like he hasn't been doing that. We go back to that Boston series. Pretty much the first 3 games, you go look at the numbers: 35, 27, and 16. Of course, he's still chipping in his assists and his rebounds, roughly around like 7 and 8 for both. And, he's doing his job. But, I think right now it just comes down to a point where everything gets thrown out the window. Everything that's been said, everything that he's done so far it's been done. There's nothing he can change about that. But now we've gone to the NBA Finals. He hasn't really he hasn't in these first 2 games hasn't looked like the Jimmy Butler as we all know. And so, I'm still going to stick with it. I don't think he's overrated as a playoff performer, but I can definitely confidently say it's a little bit overhyped, whether that's due to the injury or whether that's just him, coming back down to earth and being the player that he is. But it's going to be interesting to see how these next couple of games pan out for him, because these next couple of games are pretty big. Jimmy Butler is one guy that has the utmost confidence in himself and the team, as we been hearing through the post game pressers and everything like that. Nothing necessarily phases him, and so I think he'll be just fine. But as of right now, these next couple of games, he's going to have one of those performances where it's just like I said, he's got to be the most dominant player out there on the floor, and so we'll be looking forward to that. But with that being said, that pretty much wraps up our episode for today. How we feeling, and then close out. Any final words?
Oh, I'm ready for game 3, man. But these 2-day breaks, man, you just gotta put up with it. Guys gotta rest, but these 2-day breaks are killing me.
Game 3, man. Perfect spot for Miami if they can steal this one. Or they're meant to win it because it's a home game. But if they come in and get this W right here, tables can change mentally. It can change a lot mentally. So, we'll see what happens these next 2 games. And yeah, these 2-day breaks, it makes no sense. The Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals, a bunch of 1-day breaks, and then you do this in the finals. Come on, man.
Yeah, these next 2 days are probably going to feel like 2 weeks, but schedule, it is what it is. But for me, I'm looking forward to the games, of course. But I'm interested in seeing how the Miami Heat slot in Tyler Hero back into this series. I feel like Tyler Hero has been pretty much ready to go. I know Eric Spoelstra said that, they're trying to, let the situation play out how it's supposed to be and not necessarily rush him back into anything. But, I feel like he could have played tonight because, everything we've been seeing on social media with the pregame and all that stuff and the practices and the shoot-arounds, the hand looks pretty smooth to me. It looks like it's ready to go, and you just got to go out there and test it out. And I just feel like the Miami Heat kind of held them back in these first 2 games simply because you don't necessarily want to throw a guy into a very tough environment, especially in the first 2 games of the NBA Finals. Whether it was him sitting out game 1 and then going into tonight, you're down 1-0. You don't want to throw him in and give him all the pressure. All that added pressure is not going to be good for him. So I feel like now it's 1-1. You're going back home. Tyler Hero, I'm pretty sure he'll be ready to go for game 3. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play. But he's going to be able to feed off his home crowd, and once those first couple of shots start falling, then he'll be locked in and ready to go. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and close out this episode here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Really appreciate your love and support. We'd greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And if you listen to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now H, now that's overkill.